Yo. So, I teased this all a while ago, and even though I wanted to have some popularity to my name before dropping this, the proof is ready and it'll be here, so I might as well send it. The following video will detail my journey to reach the conclusion I made, as well as my proof in all its simplistic glory. Welcome to All Infinities are the Same Size, proof by me, Relis Anastasa. All points where I state that there is a previous proof can be found in the TED Talk done on the topic already, link in description. Given that that is my basis of understanding, and all conclusions drawn have been made with the understanding laid out in said lecture, there may be a proof stating that all infinities are the same size already. Or there may be a more solid proof that there is a hierarchy. Anyways, allow me to preface this with pointing out the glaringly obvious flaw in the proof commonly understood to be how the set of all decimal numbers is larger than the set of all integers, and, by extension, all whole numbers. The proof, in short, is that when all integers are paired one-to-one with a decimal number, it is possible to create a new decimal number that isn't any of the other decimal numbers, and thereby has no place in the pairing. However, this proof fails to account for the fact that taking countable infinity and adding 1 does not change the size, or cardinality, of countable infinity. This means that saying you can make one that doesn't fit doesn't quite disprove them being the same size. The proof of you can always add 1 means that you can take every decimal already paired, shift them down by 1 spot, and slide in the new decimal in the first spot. This proof also relies on its own disproof to work, which creates a circular logic, something not ideal in a proof. But I hear you, that's not proof enough! Which I must say, that was the preface. Now allow me to begin fleshing out my proof proper. The foundations of this proof were pondered ages ago when I thought about the concept posed in the preface. I thought there might be a more concrete way to prove that infinity is simply infinity, so I got to thinking. I remembered that there is a countably infinite number of primes, and by using the properties of how primes function, I was able to toy around with the problem I had. I considered how the problem of fitting countably infinite countable infinities into one countable infinity was solved, then wondered why they stopped at only using one prime at a time. Taking the logic used in that proof, I expanded upon it by placing a multiplication series of all primes raised to a certain number in the exponents of another prime, later simplified to simply be the multiplication series with its exponents. I then took each exponential there and posed to myself that I could have those be digits, and the primes be their places, cycling through the 4 possibilities: real whole, real decimal, complex whole, and complex decimal. I toyed with the idea of a discriminator term for a while, then deemed it pointless. This concept of using parts of how a single type of number is represented as a way to represent all numbers is foundational to the proof. The proof as it stood had a couple problems, however. First, there was the issue of rationalizing the possibility that, now that I'd done it this way, countable infinity was larger. Another problem was expanding the proof to allow decimals to represent all numbers. I dabbled with taking the roots of the primes in fraction form, but eventually dropped that due to that still technically being a countably infinite set. So if I relied on that, then I would fall into the same circular logic I pointed out was a flaw back in the preface, and thereby make weaker my proof. Meanwhile, I dabbled with how to differentiate between positive and negative, real and complex numbers. I decided that the first exponent would have twice as many possible digits, 0 through 19 instead of 0 through 9, for each of their wholes, and would use the fact that there were twice as many possibilities there to represent the difference between positive and negative numbers. There was another problem with all of it, however. I could go simpler. Let's take what worked with the prior draft and only use that. Don't worry, I'm not groundlessly BSing here. Strongest part of my proof so far was in using parts of the subsets I'm trying to prove are equal sizes as a way to represent all possible numbers, by representing the way we even write them. Specifically, have terms that are distinct due to their placement in the series, and a way to apply a specific value to that placement. Hey, wait, that just sounds like how all numbers are represented anyways. Take the number 794 for example. It's distinct from, say, 784 or 694 because of the way we write numbers. Each place is distinct due to how far away from the smallest unit it is, and each place can hold a distinct value, changing the overall distinct value from any one place's digit changing. Therefore, I could just do what I did before to create the proof, taking each placement and correlating it to a placement in all numbers. Ones being real ones, tens being real tenths, hundreds being complex ones, thousands being complex tenths, and so on and so forth, and... Wait, how am I supposed to represent positive and negative values? Well, that's where the earlier foreshadowing comes into effect. I can use discriminator terms to represent the distinction between positive and negative. So ones would represent whether the real part is negative, tens would represent whether the complex part is negative, hundreds represent the real ones, etc., etc. Doing this, I finally have my proof. Using only the numbers solves the problem of translating to decimals, as I can count incrementally the places to the right of the dot, the same way I count incrementally the places to the left for the whole numbers. One thing that also came up is the definition of a function. And I realized that if I couldn't additionally prove that the numbers used to represent and the numbers represented matched 1 to 1, I would have troubles with that aspect. To that, I introduced binary. Technically, this is already resolved by having each discriminator term only use 2 possible digits, i.e. 1 and 2 instead of even and odd, but it's still cool to see how this proof can translate between base values. Given that binary is inherently binary, I know, shocker, the discriminator terms have 0 vagueness in what represents what, and since the digits themselves only translate as the digits themselves in any base, this means that each representative number can be turned into the number it represents, and vice versa, with 0 ambiguity. Oh, and 0 is 0.